Happy Friday! I am back. I don't know if you can hear me. I guess I better get my microphone down here. Keeping it fresh here in a live broadcast. I guess I forgot that I actually used this. My microphone fell off the table and I had to reassemble it. But here I am. Happy Friday. Hi. I hope you're out there with me live today. I would love to hear from you if you're out there and with me today on this Live at 5 Friday freebie. I'm going to be talking about what to do when you finish a painting. It's funny how when you, oops, I guess I have my light a little too close here. There we go. Hello, thanks for saying hi. It's funny how when you finish a painting, your work is not completely done. And I've learned many of these lessons that I want to talk to you about today kind of the hard way. That's how I seem to learn everything. There are certain things that you should be doing when you finish your paintings that may or may not be intuitive for you. When I first started, I had no intentions of being a professional artist. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was just kind of painting because it made me happy, and that's totally fine. But I kind of wish somebody had told me right from the beginning a few of these things that might have been valuable for me to know right from the get-go. We talked last week about, or not last week, but in my last video, we talked a little bit about some novel ways to sign your paintings. And signing your work is one of those things that you need to do when you finish a painting. It's not done until you put your John Hancock at the bottom or on the side or wherever it is that you decide to put it. But before, there's other steps involved in you're buckling down for a hurricane you must be in Louisiana. God bless you. That is a scary thing when you know they're coming. I hope it ends up being not a big deal. I have not been keeping track of the weather, so hope you all fare well with the storm. I know that I had kind of thought that when you finished a painting that, that was it and you could just move on to the next one. But I'm going to advise you to do a few more things at the end of a painting, things that I wish I had done right from the beginning. And I think you'll be happy to know these steps. And if you implement them, I think in a few years you're going to look back and you're going to be glad that you did. So all of us are thinking about you there in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I hope that the winds are calmer than they expect, and that the waters stay low. That water can be such a demon. Okay, so here's my tips for you today. I'm going to show you my tabletop, and I'll just kind of write them out so that you can maybe just take note of them a little bit more easily. First and foremost, I'm going to suggest that prior to framing, you photograph. And when I say photograph, it isn't just any old picture from any old angle. It is trying to take the best photograph that you know how to take. And if you're not altogether familiar with how to take a good photograph, I would suggest that you maybe watch a YouTube video that was something that I did with some friends in the spring last year on my YouTube channel. And it's about how to photograph your art. And I will try to put a link there in the description to that YouTube video for you on how to photograph your art. But there are some things to keep in mind when you're photographing. You want to keep things kind of level. You want to keep your camera sort of the lens of your camera in the center of your painting and your camera at the same angle as your painting so that you don't skew the angle. And you want to have good light, good maybe indirect light rather than direct light. And you certainly want to make sure that you photograph prior to framing, because if you frame that painting under glass, you're going to have a really hard time getting a good photograph after that. The glare from the glass is going to make it next to impossible. Another alternative to photographing is scanning. And for those of you who have a flatbed printer, this is a really wonderful option. You can scan your paintings and get a very high resolution scan by just controlling the DPIs at which the scanner records the photo. And if you make a higher number, I would suggest maybe more than 600 DPIs, maybe more like 1200 DPIs, which stands for dots per inch. You'll get a higher resolution scan, and you'll also be able to perhaps send that to a printer to recreate your paintings should you ever want to. Maybe it sells and maybe it's one that you love, or maybe you'll want to create a print for yourself so that you have some memory, some attachment to this painting that you may have loved. So don't forget to photograph and scan your painting. And as we talked about last week, signing is something you have to remember. I have been known to take my paintings to the frame shop, and I kid you not, and realize as I'm getting it ready to frame that I haven't put a signature on there, and I've had to borrow a pencil from the frame store and sign my name on their counter. It's kind of ridiculous, and I may be one of the extremes, but it is what it is, and I can only be me. I don't pretend to be anything other than that. I'm going to take care of some business here. There we go. So I'm really, I'm maybe a little bit extremely absent-minded in that regard, but don't forget to sign it. And I used to have this list pasted on my studio wall so that I would remember to do these things. So I've learned to remember to do them over the years, but I'm going to try to share this list with you now. The other thing that I would suggest that you do besides photographing or scanning and signing your work is to consider recording details about it somewhere in the form of an inventory, or maybe even in a journal. Maybe get a journal and dedicate it to recording details about your paintings. You could think about bringing printing a small photo and putting it on the journal page, and then next to it, I would record details. Details might include, and I would suggest that they include the dimensions of the painting, perhaps materials that you used. Let's say in 3 years you want to go back and you want to recreate something similar. You'll be surprised how quickly you forget the colors that you've used and perhaps even the process that you used. If you record in the form of a journal entry the process that you used, you might be happy that you did, because somebody might say, "Oh, I really like that piece. I would like you to paint one for me." And if you haven't noted that process anywhere, you're going to have a hard time remembering perhaps the steps that you took or the lessons that you learned. A lot of times when I journal, when I'm doing a painting, I will journal as I go, and I'll journal what are my goals, what are my colors. If I had any steps in the process, sometimes I will write what I did from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, that sort of thing. Now, of course, I'm a teacher, and so sometimes I'm interested in recording my process so that I can share it with my students. But even so, for your own benefit, I could see this being a really valuable thing if you wanted to do the painting again. Another thing that I would encourage you to note is whether or not you used opaque mediums in your watercolor, because some shows, believe it or not, like the Transparent Watercolor Society of America, you cannot use opaque paint, nor can you use metallic paint. So if you note in your description to self about that painting, or in your inventory, if you note whether or not you used any opaque materials or metallic materials, those sorts of things, it might help you when and where you might want to enter into a show to know what you did. Some of us forget that we added a little white ink or a little bit of white paint or something along those lines, and it could make a difference in the future. So I would encourage you to think about noting those things, and perhaps journaling, or at minimum keeping an art inventory. I had a friend when I first started painting. Dixie Dugan is a well-known painter here in the Myrtle Beach area, and she printed out a photo of each of her paintings, and then on the back she wrote the details about it, the size, top to bottom, side to side and top to bottom, and the price, and if somebody purchased it, she wrote their purchase information on the back of the physical photograph of her painting. And who of us prints physical photographs anymore? Very few of us anymore. Most of what we do is digital. But the problem with digital stuff is that it's easy to lose. It's easy to lose the digital information that we have. I've seen so many artists who want to show me their painting, and they have their painting amidst a sea of other photographs. They have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll, and by the time, if I were somebody who was uninterested, by the time they found that painting, I would be no longer interested. I think it's a really good idea to organize your photographs on your phone into an album. Maybe an album that is something simple like my paintings or paintings. And just to get in the habit of putting your photographs of your artwork in one organized place, so that in the happy event that someone is interested in seeing your work, you won't have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll through baby pictures and through pictures of pretty sunsets to find the odd random photograph of your own painting. So think about organizing your work that way on your phone, and maybe even physically, like my friend Dixie, printing out photos of your work for inventory purposes. I think that was kind of an old school genius that she used. Along with recording the details of your painting, you may want to consider pricing that painting right away, just putting a price tag on it. Because the next thing that I'm going to encourage you to do, besides putting a price on your painting, is to share it. And I think this is the final step that you should make with pretty much any painting that you feel is worthy of being shared. Now remember, we've all got about 500 bad paintings in us, and not everything we do is probably going to be wonderful. I think I can guarantee that. But there are going to be wonderful paintings along the way that should be shared. And even if you feel as if you're a hobbyist, I'm going to encourage you to share your work. And I think the best place these days to share your work is on your Facebook and also on Instagram. Now, Instagram may not be something that you are part of, but as an artist, I want to encourage you to go there and to create an identity for yourself on Instagram. It is a visual playhouse, and it really is a wonderful place for artists to share their work. And I want you to look me up on Instagram, and I want you to follow me there, and I will try to do the same for you. I am finding anymore that the majority of my sales are coming through social media, and if not directly through social media, they are as the result of social media and my presence on social media. People know that I'm an artist. They've come to like and know and trust me as an artist, trust that much of my work is something that resonates with them, and so they seek me out. And I'm not saying that I'm special, I'm just saying that I think it's a result of the fact that the social media presence that I have is effective, and it could be effective for you. And I do believe that it is the final and very important step in defining yourself as an artist. And even if you're a hobbyist, it's nice to share with the world the fact that you are creating something beautiful and doing something that brings you joy. I think the world needs more news like that. The world needs more good news. The world needs more beauty. And if you can be a contributor to that through your art practice, then I think you're going to enhance not only your experience, but the experience of others. People are looking for things to be happy about, and I think that art is a source of joy and positivity, and that is especially welcome in today's environment. So think about getting yourself on Instagram and sharing your work there. Think about looking for me. There you can find me as Rebecca Z Artist. I am posting pretty regularly and really enjoy the Instagram feed that I have. I'm really have to say, if I had to say which is the more enjoyable thing for me to browse and to scroll through these days anymore, it is my Instagram account, because it is very visual. And I have liked and followed many talented and wonderful artists on Instagram, and it just makes me happy to scroll through those pictures and just dwell upon the beautiful things that are being created by others out there. And I would predict that you would feel the same way. So look me up, Rebecca Z Artist. Don't forget to photograph your work or scan it, sign your work, record the details somewhere, either in a journal or in an inventory process. Record the dimensions, record your materials, record your process, whether or not you used anything opaque or metallic or acrylic in your work. Don't forget to price, or at least think about pricing, and then think about sharing it, sharing those great photos with the world, and think about taking advantage of how so many people, millions and millions of people, are available to you through those avenues of social media. I've had a question here about advice on signing initials versus full name. And I guess the thing that I would say about that is to make your signature something that you can recreate with ease, and something that brings you pleasure when you end up looking at it. I really loved my script signature, and when I first started signing, I used to use my script signature, and I still find it a pleasant visual on a painting. But the thing about my name is that the Y in script goes low, below what might be a static line on which you might write a name. And you have to allow for that when you are signing. You know, if you have a letter that dips below, you have to leave room for that. So when and where you're signing, my big piece of advice would be to sign an inch above the edge that might be framed, and an inch inside the side edge too, so that framing or matting will not cut off your name. All too often people sign their name really close to the edge, and if somebody were to mat or frame the piece, that signature might be obscured as a result. So that's a couple thoughts for you to avoid signing too close to the edge. Keep in mind, if you have letters that dip below the line, to leave space for that. And as far as initials or last name, I'll just share a story with you. A friend of mine and I were looking at a beautiful piece of art that she had purchased that we both just loved. We both just loved it. And I said, well, who's the artist? And she said, you know, I don't know. I forget. And so we searched and searched on that painting and could not find the name of the artist. I think that's unfortunate. And so I would suggest to you that it might be a good idea to have the name be legible enough that someone could think about reading it. You know, it's a matter of opinion. This is just my opinion, but someday, if somebody looks at one of my paintings, I would hope that they would be able to read the name there. Now, I sign with just my last name. Why do I do that? Well, first of all, Rebecca Zadibble is kind of long. It's not short, and there's not that many Zadibbles out there. Let's face it. I mean, when have you seen my last name anywhere else? So I kind of feel like Zadibble might hopefully be enough. The other thing is that I've had it said, and I would hate to think that this is true, but unfortunately I think this might be true, that there is an inherent bias toward males within the art world, and I think it is a plausible assertion, given the fact that, you know, so few female artists have been elevated throughout history, and female artists are generally not just not as given the accolades that men might be given societally. And so in order to offset any sort of gender bias, were I to enter a painting into a show, or just to offset gender bias, I just have taken to using my last name for that reason. So, yeah, and male chefs in the food industry, I'm sure that sort of gender bias is there. We as female teachers have been known in studies to favor male students in terms of their questions and the amount of attention that they give. I don't know. Perhaps some of it is built into the genes, but it is what it is, right? We can't really necessarily change it, but that's why I just use my own last name as the singular way in which I sign my paintings now. So that's a couple thoughts for you on signatures, and maybe you've got my 2 cents or 5 cents worth on what my suggestions might be. If you have any other questions about any of these things that I mentioned about recording details or scanning or photographing, feel free to put them in the comments. I'm going to end, I think, here today, but I will put a link to the YouTube video that where I featured a couple of fellow artists, one a photographer and one a fellow artist, and we talked about how to photograph your art, and it might be of interest to you. So anyway, hope you're having a good Friday. I hope you're on the way to a wonderful weekend. I hope those of you in the eye of the hurricane are going to come out the other side and do just fine. We'll certainly be keeping track of what's going on in your neck of the woods and wish you all the best. Take care till next week, everyone. If you're interested in coming to studio classes, I am going to be offering them on Thursdays, 1 to 4 p.m. here in the studio, and just contact me. I'm hoping to send a newsletter out this weekend. If you have not signed up for my newsletter, I think because you're a part of this group, I think you will automatically be getting a copy of that newsletter. If you get an email from me, just shoot me back an email. Let me know how you're doing. And I always love to receive return emails when I send out a newsletter. I never quite know if it's not all business with me. So I would love to hear back from you and have the chance to have a personal exchange and engage with you that way. All right, guys, I guess that's it for today. Sending you lots of love, and I will see you next week for another Friday freebie. Take care till then.